Well, hello and good evening, and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antiques Society tasting. Tonight, I'm going to be tasting peated whiskies from not from Islay, but from another island in Scotland called Mull, and they're from the Tobermory distillery on Mull, which is the only distillery on the Scottish island of Mull and is located in the middle of the eponymous capital of Mull. Uh, Tobermory is one of the oldest active distilleries in Scotland. The three whiskies we're going to try tonight, two are samples. One is of the perfect measure from the Whisky Exchange, and it's Berry Brothers and Rudd bottling of Ledaig 2009, CASK number 700331, bottled at 58.6%. And then we've got one of their core range, non-age statement, Ledaig Sinclair series. This one finished in a Rioja cask at 46.3%. And then we have the recently released, I think late last year, so it's probably been on the market for about a year or so. This is the Ledaig Triple Wood, bottled at 53.8%. So a little bit about Tobermory Distillery. It was established in 1798, and it is one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland then. Back then, John Sinclair, hence the Sinclair series for the second whisky we'll try tonight, named his distillery Ledaig, which is Gaelic for safe haven. The small town that Sinclair had chosen for his distillery was the small fishing harbour in a quiet bay, so indeed a veritable safe haven, Ledaig. The distillery has had ups and downs over the course of its history. It's been mothballed, reopened, and sold again and again. The last long production halt lasted from 1930 until 1972, so almost half of the last century. After thorough renovations, the newly founded Ledaig Distillery Limited reopened the distillery. However, 3 years later, it went bankrupt. But this time, production wasn't halted for long, and in 1979, Tobermory Distillers Limited, which was founded by the buyers Kirklevington Property, resumed production. But again, they couldn't last longer than 3 years. When Burn Stewart Distillers, who also own Bunnahabhain and Deanston, took over Tobermory in 1993, a more stable era seemed to have begun. But the only constant thing in life is change, and Burn Stewart was bought by CL Financial for £50 million in 2002. The subsequent years were successful, and when Burn Stewart were again sold, this time to the South African Distell Group Limited, famous for cider in South Africa, I believe, their value had already increased to £160 million. Since the new South African owners took over, the annual production has been set to 850,000 litres of alcohol. So it's not a small operation. It's more or equal to Springbank, for example. And that production is split evenly between Tobermory and Ledaig. Tobermory doesn't operate at full capacity, which would be 1 million litres per year. But switching between the two recipes, the Tobermory whiskey is unpeated and the jig is peated. That's not so easy as the pots have to be thoroughly cleansed first. When the production is changed from smoky Ledaig to non-smoky Tobermory, this is particularly difficult and requires a cleaning period of 2 weeks. Tobermory has its own water source called Garaban. The Tobermory River carries the water past the distillery and was also used as its power supply in the past. The water is interspersed with peaty phenols that give Tobermory a slightly phenolic character, although the malt used for Tobermory whiskey is unpeated. The malting floors have been closed long ago. For a long time, Tobermory used an old cast iron mash tun that had a capacity of 5 tons. However, this was replaced by a new environmentally friendly semi-lauter mash tun made of stainless steel and with energy recovery of the water. A wall in the distillery was especially knocked down for this replacement. Mashing is done in 3 stages, the last of which is recycled to get the maximum sugar. The mash tun is filled with 9.5 tons of barley grist, which yields about 33,000 litres of mash that then goes on to fermentation. The 4 wooden washbacks made of Douglas fir wood have a capacity of 50,000 litres each, but are only filled with a batch of mash of 33,000 litres each before the yeast is added. The still has a relatively long fermentation time of 56 to over 100 hours, resulting in a fruity flavour. The process is the same for both types of whiskey. The difference is only in the smoke content. The barley is dried using peat for Ledaig. The Tobermory distillery uses 2 pairs of pot stills. One of the pairs was renewed in 2014. The 2 wash stills are filled with 16,500 litres each. The spirit stills with 16,700 litres each. The size of the stills is roughly the same and the shape is also similar, yet each still is slightly different. It's rather unusual for the spirit still to be filled with more alcohol. This is due to the distilling speed of Tobermory, which is significantly slower in the spirit still. This allows the alcohol to spread out better, rise up the line arm to the condenser, and the condensate can flow back into the copper pot. Tobermory has hardly any storage capacity, as the warehouse located across the road was sold and converted into flats. Therefore, most of the distillery's casks are stored at its sister distillery, Deanston, near Doon, on the Scottish mainland. There is a small warehouse on site with space for storing smaller quantities of casks for special editions or limited bottlings. So there's 2 different lines of whiskey produced at Tobermory. On the one hand, we have the Tobermory whiskey, which with just a hint of phenols from the water source. On the other hand, the peated Ledaig whiskey, which has peated barley. For the Tobermory, the unpeated malt variety Optic Concerto with less than 2 parts per million phenolic content is used, where the Ledaig is made from peated Optic Concerto barley with 30 to 40 parts per million phenolic content. A very strongly peated version was also offered in the past in small quantities under the Iona label. The standard bottlings of the 2 labels are the 12-year-old Tobermory and the 10-year-old Ledaig, but Older single malts are also available as original bottlings of both, such as Tobermory 21-year-old or a Ledaig 18-year-old. Tobermory 12 years old is an intense and aromatic single malt with a fruity and floral character and spicy notes such as ginger and aniseed, slightly nutty aromas, and a medium long finish. It's non chill filtered and without artificial colouring, as are all the uh, whiskies produced by the distillery. The Ledaig 10 years old, by contrast, combines peat smoke with malty aromas, citrus fruits, pepper, and maritime notes. And its character is somewhat reminiscent of an Islay malt, but I'll go into that in a bit more detail when we sum up. And it's also non-chill filtered and without artificial colouring. Beside these original bottlings from Burn Stewart Distillers, which was bought by the South African Distill Group in 2013, there are a lot of independent bottlings of Tobermory and Ledaig on the market, and we're going to try one of those now. So this is the Berry Brothers and Rudd Ledaig 2009, CASK number 700331, bottled at 58.6% ABV. So it was distilled in 2009 and matured in the single cask before being bottled in 2019. So it's 10 years of age. It's one of only 249 bottles and was matured in a refill ex-bourbon hogshead. So that's why I've started with this one. Give us a good idea of what the distillery character is. And there's nice tears on this one. It's quite a pale gold straw colour. And it's a sublimely balanced nose. You get the trademark peatiness with notes of yellow fruit, ripe yellow fruit, and that sort of new leather, wet new leather. And the smokiness is a sort of bonfirey, roasty kind of smokiness with some burnt rubber. There's notes of citrus, lemons that have been charred on the barbecue. And there's a hint of tropical fruits and vanilla. Peaty. It's a fun whiskey and it's got a big blast in your nose. But as I'll touch upon later, it's a different kind of smokiness, different kind of peat from Islay. I'll try them out. There's a mature depth to the smoke, which diffuses beautifully on the mouth, with the fruit and the phenols jousting for attention. It's a long, smoky, and exceptionally balanced whiskey. Roasty, toasty smoke. And then you get the charred citruses and that touch of tropical fruit and sherbet. But You get more room for the throat on the mouth than you do on the nose. But you also get the salty ocean breeze, iodine, and some medicinal roots or herbs. But it's not TCP. It's very light iodine. And there's a mature depth to the smoke. Fruit and phenols in abundance. And it's still a blast of fun, but also quite nuanced. And on the finish, there's a wave of pineapple and citrus. And that calms down to linger in the background, together with charred notes, a bit of iodine, on those herbs and roots. It's long, smoky, fruity, and exceptionally well balanced. This is 58.6, so I'm going to add 6 drops of water to this. Sometimes when you get this sort of strength of whiskey, it's good to play around with the water. Add a little to start with. And you definitely get Scotch mist in this. And as you often find when you add water to peated whiskey, maritime type whiskey, it becomes more briny. It's a proper maritime malt. Seashells, seaweed, coal fires, and oily diesel fumes. And now you get the ash and some of the medicinal peat. Dark, mouldy warehouses. There's also a lighter side, however. Beyond that coastal smoke is a lightness with grassy malt notes and it's like lemon scented air fresheners. And it's got a citrus and honey arrival, followed by black pepper, which I think I just got, sea salt. And then you get the oakiness and the dry, ashy smoke. And that smoke arrives as a wisp, but grows and leaves a big old storm cloud of peat. And there's some oaky spice on the finish. But the briny seaweed character is also present and correct. So this whiskey offers a full-on assault to your senses, which I think most Islays would struggle to compete with. So, of course, it does require you to be in a specific mood, but when you are, this would be great. I'm going to cleanse my palate with the half an Nairn's finely milled oatcake. So the second whiskey we're going to try tonight is Ledaig Sinclair series Rioja finish, bottled at 46.3%. And this I only have a sample of, but the box apparently is ship adorned, and the Spanish seafaring connection explains the Rioja CASK finish in the whiskey after it had matured in ex-bourbon for an unspecified time. So let's see, does this deserve a place at the captain's table? Or will it be grog, fit only for the lads below deck? And you get that sort of rosy hue to it from the Rioja. And there's some tears, not quite as thick as with the CASK strength Berry Brothers and Rudd version, but let's see where we go with this. And you get the red grapes. Cinnamon. Rose petal jelly. And a wave of coastal smoke. And salty with sweet smoke. Bit of mineral with banana chips and grey moulding clay. And that smoke dissipates then. And there's a sort of bright orange citrus. There's a slight farmy note. And then you get the new make character beginning to appear. And it's an interesting ultra sweet wave of matches and matchbox, caramel, chocolate, dried fruits, and there's a sort of light new wood and some raisins. And it's warming with sweet spices, but I'm not getting any alcohol hit here from the nose. Molasses, and there's some leather and malt and cereal. Sticky sweet smoke and red tinge, slightly sour wine notes. And there's a light citrus in the background and a faint cinnamon. It's a bit young and a bit spirity, but not in a bad way. Charred salmon with sweet beets and a glass of red wine. Anise and licorice stick. And then smoked cheese. And raspberry jelly with milk chocolate. It's quite elegant. And again, quite floral and rich fruit, spice. And the smokiness is very subtle. very subtle. A little bit of maritime, a little bit of smoke, a touch of peat. Let's try the mouth. And it's quite a light start, quite even keeled. A bit of oak and peat, earthy and slightly vegetal, and a small sour edge to it with the simple syrup. Spiciness. Plasticine and tropical juice concentrate. The new make farm character appears on the palate too. It's really tasty. Grassy peat, stewed plum, raspberry, almond, dark chocolate, caramel, vanilla, new wood, dried fruit, and Christmas raisins. It's pungent but delicious. And that honey or molasses flavour. A sweet touch that doesn't make it completely dry. And an unroasted but uncooked fruit has a subtle cooked vegetable adding to the complexity. Sweet, ashy, red grapes, stewed raspberries, light wood char. And you do get some of the ropey tar notes that are prominent in the 10-year-old Ledaig, but they're in the background, behind the wine sweetness. The palate is slightly thinner than I was expecting from an unchill filter, 46.3% ABV. But there's a good overall balance between the wine and the distillate. Even though, if I might prefer a tiny bit more of the distinct spirit coming through, it's nicely enjoyable overall. The raspberry is here with smoked almonds and lemon boiled sweets. A touch of red bean pastes and coconut ice. And on the finish, salted caramel, cherry, clove, medium, tannic, vinous, uh, ex bourbon, hot, roasted red apples, and the ever present blanket of peat smoke hangs on for a long time, which is always welcome, I think. I get a little of that wininess hanging on to the sides of my throat, which is a little bit less welcome, but not altogether unpleasant. I'm going to try 5 drops of water in this 46.3% ABV. And you get definite Scotch mist here. And now, instead of opening with vanilla, it opens with malt and burnt sugar. And it's like a tray of crunchy peanuts with sugar on them. Honey roast peanuts. I used to get them on planes mostly. Little bag of them. kind of a and it retains a sweet yet quite dry footprint, which is perhaps due to the astringency of the tannins. It's all permeated with wine and ex-bourbon as a supporting ingredient. And the finish is quite long, initially very malty, with an appealing roasted note. Then the toasted wood reappears from the hiding place. Freshly ground coffee, cocoa, and it's like you're quickly chewing on a small wine gum, and the red fruits fade quickly. And a bitten currant stone ensures a short, one breaking moment before the throat is lubricated with the tarry fly ash, and a peaty and slightly earthy finish with a mineral calcareous aftertaste. You know, in 2024, when prices everywhere are skyrocketing faster than you can say Diageo special releases, which we'll look at soon, both for inflationary reasons, but also companies and many indies are pushing the envelope to see what they can get away with. This whiskey stands out as a good choice for a very reasonable price of £33. It's an enjoyable balance of smoky and fruity flavours that is a little bit different. The bitter, slightly sour edge the wine brings isn't something I'm terribly keen on. The red fruits are quite pleasant, and the overall experience of the whiskey is solid. The alcohol is well behaved, and the bourbon matured base spirit is still showing through with some vanilla and slight peaches in the early part of the palate. And I think I got to enjoy it a bit more as I got used to the wine notes going on. The nose is great, and the palate carries a lot of the same notes. There's just that little something that doesn't land quite right for me. And I can remember a similar theme with the Glen Scotia Bordeaux finish release from 2021 and the Kilcommon STR wine cask release. The Kilcommon I got this weird minty toothpaste bitter note from. This isn't quite to that point, but it's in the ballpark. It's good, but it's not something I'd seek out. But you do see it gets brownie points for being cheap. Right, I'm going to cleanse my palate again. So, the third and final whiskey of our Ledaig tasting is the Triple Wood. Nice box, nice photography on it, signature of Gordon Buchanan. So, as you probably surmised from the name, to create this limited edition Ledaig master blender, Julian Fernandez selected 3 cask types for maturation: bourbon, Rioja, and tawny port. She married the 3 components together and bottled the whole thing at 53.8%. It marks a further step in the collaboration with the Scottish wildlife cameraman, filmmaker, and presenter Gordon Buchanan, who is a Mull native and Mull and Iona Community Trust. His photography was the basis for the whiskey's label and the signatures on the box. And it does have no added colour, non-chill filtered on the box. And on the bottle. So our donation from the production of the Ledaig Triplewood will go towards the Mull and Iona Community Trust to support the island's biodiversity and enhance the local community. So that's always a lovely thing to hear. So, not cask strength, but it's been only tempered down to 53.8%. Non-age statement. Nice tears on this one. And now there's barbecue smoke, but through that you're getting praline, candied pear, and cinnamon. And it has a big, sweet, rich quality, like Werther's original toffees dipped in caramel sauce. And a big, juicy apple dripping with buttery caramel down the centre. And but that has been dropped in and rolled in farmyard dung. It's very earthy and farmy to the point of tangy. I do get the sense it is quite young. Smoky around the edges, rubbery and vinegary. There's a big bittersweet blackcurrant wall at the back, shoving everything forwards, but throwing up scents of black coffee, red berries, currants, and jam. It does feel that all the casks have something each to offer here. And what could have been quite noisy and indecipherable, it's actually very well laid out. So red wine, red fruit sweetness, soda bread, a marine salinity, herbal liqueur, biltong, dark chocolate, salted nuts, and some earthiness. It's salty and sweet up front, and the taste widens out though and deepens across the palate with a youthful kick. There's a hint of light buttercream, but that's quickly snuffed out. Uh, Bittersweet blackcurrant is back, driving things along and creating a darker sweetness in combination with the peat. So red wine vinegars there, smoke charred ends, and a salty fattiness intertwines with dark chocolate, more coffee, raspberry jam, and grapefruit. Uh, it does really hang around on the palate, shifting constantly into the finish. And the finish is this ashen cherry tunes, as menthol sweets, cherry menthol sweets, lingering with a little toffee. And there's some minerally rock pool qualities and peppery spice. It's a medium long finish with old coffee grounds and more charred end smoke. It's a nice finish, succinct, slightly bitter, with echoes of what was on the mouth. I'm going to add 5 drops of water to this. There's a nice mist there. And the water increases the minerality. There's a lot of peat. There's also a lot of sweet notes, toffee, honey, spicy and sweet notes. Gingerbread, honey, and it's also a delicate jasmine note, like a herbaliness. You still get the wininess, but there's now a lot of peat. Barbecue, grilled plums, saltiness, that kind of charred bitterness. Peat, I would say, is the dominant flavour of the water. I think the finish is peaty again, bitterness, saltiness, salted caramel, light pepperiness, cardamom, and an anise freshness to it all. I think I prefer this one without water. I think I got more of the fruit, the berries, the wininess without water. I'll be brief in saying that I do like this, and I like Ledaig generally. And this one is a young Ledaig, plenty of cask influence, which it takes, and it wraps it all up with a little bow, and it does present it rather beautifully. It's full on tangy, filthy Ledaig with all the notes you'd expect from good bourbon, port, and wine maturation. The Ledaig spirit takes just about anything you throw at it cask wise. Everything comes out clearly, coherently, and dripping with Ledaig character. So, 3 Ledaigs, uh, and I very much like what Tobermory are producing with Ledaig. It's different from Islay peated whiskey. Unlike many distilleries in the Scottish Islands, Tobermory matures its malts in a warehouse on the mainland, mostly at Deanstown, not on the island itself. I don't yet know where Tobermory get their peat from, but I suspect it may be Highland in origin. I think peat expressions from every distillery are a bit different. And they can range from a subtle richness or earthiness to barbecue, to medicinal, to campfire. Probably depending on the techniques used and the type of peat they have used to dry the barley. There's always smoke though, and that part never changes. It's there if you look. The fun part is figuring out what parts are distillery character, that is briny cured meats. Is the brine from the peat or the still or aging? And I think Ledaig is one of the best examples of the typical barbecue notes that people thinking of are thinking of when they're thinking of peaty, smoky offerings. It's like a maple bacon and smoked meat in liquid form. And I think the peat they're using is more of the mossy variety. It's given it more of a vegetal and farmyard funkiness. If you like peated whiskey and you've never tried Ledaig, it is worth a taste for a contrast to our usual peat bombs. Thank you for listening.